بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم رسولا ونبيا ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Continuing on with the Prophet ﷺ's legendary military empire, the era of Sayyidina Uthman bin Affan, picking up from page number 277, 13.4, the heroism of Abdullah ibn az-Zubayr in the conquest of North Africa. A simple disclosure, please do refer to the prior 17 videos of the era of Sayyidina Uthman bin Affan. There's also the era of Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab. His series is a total of 69 videos, which is the legendary military government of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, government military that is. Also the era of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, a total of 50 videos, the legendary military legacy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam's military career, a total of 30 videos, also on the same channel. Picking up now that Abdullah ibn az-Zubayr's action indicate lofty aspirations to reach very ambitious goals, which were usually surrounded by danger. He was 27 years old at that time, and he was not known to have done anything this daring and brave in the past. One may ask, how did he suddenly decide to embark on this dangerous mission? The answer is that such risky actions are undertaken only by exceptional people who yearn for paradise. When Ibn az-Zubayr embarked on this risky endeavor, he had no desire for this world. He only hoped for what Allah Jalla Jalaluhu had promised the fighters in his cause, according to their ability, whether they achieve victory or martyrdom. The battle of Dhat al-Sawari. The Byzantines were crushed in North Africa, and their shores fell under Muslim rule after the Islamic Navy took control of the coastline of the Mediterranean between Rhodes and Cyrenaica. Constantine, at this time, the son of Heraclius, assembled a naval force built by the Byzantines. He set out with 1,000 ships to strike the Muslims and avenge his continuous losses on land. Uthman granted permission to confront them. Thus Muawiyah sent ships of Syria, commanded by Busr ibn Arta, who joined the navy of Abdullah ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Sarh in Egypt. Although the ships only amounted to 200, the Islamic force began moving forward. On board were some of the bravest Muslimin warriors who had been toughened by past battles. They set out with the aim of honoring Allah Jalla Jalaluhu's religion and crushing the Byzantines. Some of the reasons behind this historic battle: number one, the Muslims had dealt a heavy blow to the Byzantines in North Africa. Number two, the Byzantines had suffered significant losses when the Muslimin had taken over the eastern and southern coastlines. Number three, the Byzantines feared that the Muslim navy would grow even stronger. And number four, Constantine, the son of Heraclius, wanted to reclaim the he had previously enjoyed as a ruler. Number five, the Byzantines wanted to maintain their rule over the Mediterranean. This way, they could control its islands and use them to attack the shores of the Arabs. Number six, the Byzantines wanted to reclaim Alexandria, which had been quite vulnerable or valuable to them. 13.5.1. The location of the battle. Historians differ on where exactly the battle took place. The Arab sources do not mention it, with the exception of one. As far as we are aware, which mentions the precise location, another source states that this is actually the place to which the Byzantines were heading. Dr. Shawqi Abdul Khalil thinks it is likely that the battle took place on the shores of Alexandria, and this is due to the following. An-Nujum al-Zahira fi Muluk Misr wal-Qahira clearly mentions the battle of Dhat al-Sawari took place in the area by Alexandria. It is stated in Tarikh Ibn Quldum after Ibn Abi Sar had afflicted North Africa and returned to Egypt. Constantine, the son of Heraclius, set out to invade Alexandria with 600 ships. The Arab sources that do not mention the location of this battle connect it with the Byzantine losses in North Africa. The Byzantine navy had a noble and respected status. It had been the lord of the Mediterranean. Thus, it was bold enough to attack the coast of the Islamic State. This is why Dr. Shawqi Abu Khalil deemed it most likely that the Byzantine navy sailed to the shores of Alexandria with the intention of reconquering it. By doing so, they would also destroy the new navy that the Arabs had started to building in Egypt, right where they were stationed. This in turn would ensure that the waters and the islands of the Mediterranean would be under Byzantine control. Non-Arab sources call Dhat al-Sawari the Battle of Phinokos after an outpost located west of Alexandria near the city of Marsa Matruh. Thus the location is explicit here. 13.5.2 What happened in the battle? Malik ibn Aus ibn al-Hadathan describes what happened. I was with them in Dhat al-Sawari and we met at the sea. We looked at their ships and had never seen anything like them. The wind was in their favor, so we anchored for a while and they anchored near us. Then the wind increased and we said to the Byzantines, let us make peace. They replied, you can do that, but we shall destroy you. The Muslims offered the Byzantine the choices of either going ashore to fight or fighting at sea. According to Malik ibn Aus, they were emphatic about fighting at sea. This shows that the Byzantines were relying on their experience and held high hopes of its helping them win against the Muslimin, who were relatively new to such a war. Fair. The army spent the night at sea and the situation of the Muslims were crucial. The Muslims spent the night invoking and embracing Allah Jalla Jalaluhu while the Byzantines kept ringing the bells on their ships. In the morning, Constantine wanted to hasten to fight, but when Abdullah ibn Sa'd ibn Asar had finished leading the Fajr prayer, he consulted his advisors and together they came up with a strategic plan. They decided that the battle should take place on land, even though they were really standing up on ship. However, how could that be? Abdullah ordered his ships to draw close to the enemy's ships until they were touching. A group of self-sacrificing fighters went down into the water and tied the Muslims and the Byzantine ships together with thick rope. There were 1,200 ships, of which every 10 or 20 were now tied together. Hence the ships formed pieces of land upon which the fighting would take place. Abdullah ibn Sa'd gathered his men at the side of the ships and admonished them, instructing them to recite the Quran, especially Surah Al-Anfal, for it discusses unity, steadfastness, and patience. The Byzantines began the battle, certain that their victory was guaranteed. They attacked the Muslim ships, aiming to break the back of the Muslim naval force with the very first blow. They broke the first row of the Muslims who were next to their ships, and then the fighting became chaotic. A fierce battle raged, and blood flowed until the surface of the sea became red. Bodies kept falling in the water, and the waves kept hitting the ships until they were driven to the shore. Many Muslimin, along with the numerous Byzantines, were killed. Theophanes, a Byzantine historian, described the battle as the second Yarmouk for the Byzantines. At-Tabari's description is, there was more blood than water in this battle. The Byzantines tried to sink the ship of the Muslim commander. Abdullah ibn Abi Sarh saw that the army would have no one to lead them. They sent a Byzantine ship which came forth and cast shackles on Abdullah's ship in order to hold it back and isolate it. However, Al-Qama ibn Yazid al-Ghatifi saved the ship and its leader by jumping into the shackles and cutting them with his sword. Despite all the difficulties, the Muslims remained firm and patient. Allah had written victory for them in return for their perseverance. The remainder of the Byzantine navy was driven away. Commander Constantine himself was almost captured, as mentioned by Ibn Abdul Hakam. But he managed to escape after seeing his forces collapse and the dead bodies of his men thrown ashore by the waves. His naval force, which he had hoped, would bring them a spectacular victory and restore their honor, sank piece by piece before his own eyes. He fled defeated and failed with a painful heart and wounded body. The wind cast him towards the island of Sicily, and the people there asked him what had happened. When he told them, they cried, "You have failed the Christians and destroyed their men. If the Muslims come here now, we will not have anyone to drive them away." They killed him but spared those who were with him on the ships. 13.5.3 The outcome of the battle. Dhat al-Sawari was the first naval battle undertaken by the Muslims at sea. During the battle, the sailors of this navy, which was still in its infancy, displayed commendable patience along with strong faith and endurance. They also demonstrated their sound thinking by coming up with a strategy that made the battle very hard for the enemy. It made it impossible for the enemy to break the rules of the Muslim without difficulty. Muslims also utilized long hooks with which they pulled the mats and sails of the enemy ships, or the masts and sails of the enemy ships, and this proved to be catastrophic for the Byzantines. Dhat al-Sawari enabled the Muslims to traverse the sea, which was previously controlled by the Byzantines. They were now able to conquer Cyprus, Crete, Corsica, Sardinia, Sicily, and the Balearic Islands, which they connected with Genoa and Marseille. Constantine was killed and his fourth son succeeded him. Since he was very young, the Muslims got an opportunity to launch a campaign on land and at sea later with the aim of conquering Constantinople, the Byzantine capital. Spiritual preparations, or as they say today, a morale booster. Before the battle, it is an invaluable tool in achieving victory in that it makes the hearts turn earnestly to Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. The believers who spend their night in prayer and remembrance and who seek Allah Jalla Jalaluhu's help before they enter a battle will meet the enemy in high spirits without fearing death. The water of the Mediterranean were now under the control of the Muslim Navy. Rather than acting as power-hungry pirates, the Muslim Navy invited people to Allah, subdued the polytheists, and spread the civilization of the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Muslims began studying the arts of sailing, shipbuilding and arming, and how to fight on board ships. They also studied astronomy to help them navigate and ascertain the locations of their ships from various maps of the sea. They learned about the astrolabe, or the astrolabe, which was an astronomical compass. In fact, they developed it so much that Western sailors like Christopher Columbus and Amerigo Vespucci used it in their explorations. This battle was yet another way of showing that firm faith is superior to military experience, greater numbers, or state-of-the-art equipment. After all, the Byzantines had been sailing for a long time and were well experienced in naval warfare. On the other hand, the Muslims were new to sailing and fighting at sea. Despite this, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu allowed the Muslimin to prevail because He made them the people who would spread His Islam and His high word, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, upon the entire world. Another noteworthy fact in this battle was the strength of the commander Abdullah ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Sarh, as well as his composure and remarkable ability to manage the war zone. This also demonstrates the intrepidness of the Muslimin and their readiness to sacrifice themselves for the sake of honoring their religion and assisting the Muslim state. 13.6 The most important lessons to be learned from Uthman's conquest. 13.6.1 Allah's promise shall always come true. While discussing Uthman ibn Affan, Ibn Kathir notes, Allah allowed many regions to be conquered at his hands. Thus, with the Islamic kingdom extending, the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam grew larger, and the message of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam reached each and every corner of the lands. People could now see the authenticity in Allah's word. Allah Jalla Jalaluhu has promised those who have believed among you and done righteous deeds that He will surely grant them succession to the authority upon the earth, just as He granted it to those of them, and that none should be worshipped. That Allah surely established for them their religion which He has preferred for them, and that He will surely substitute for them after their fear security, for they worship Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, not associating any with Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. But whoever disbelieves after that, then those are the defiantly disobedient ones. Quran, Surah number 24, ayah number 55. It is He who has sent Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam with guidance and the religion of truth to manifest it over all religions, although they who associate others with Allah Jalla Jalaluhu dislike it. Quran, Surah number 9, ayah number 33. Likewise, the truth is found in the Prophet's words, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which says, once Caesar dies, there will be no Caesar after him, and once Khosroes dies, there will be no Khosroes after him. By him in whose hand my soul lies, you will spend their treasures in the cause of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. This is in Sahih Muslim. All this became true and was affirmed in the time of Sayyidina Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu. 13.6.2 Development of the art of warfare in politics. In the past, people would wage war for a piece of land or to avenge the violation of someone's city or tribe. In the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then in the era of the rightfully guided Khalifas, however, people went to war for principle. The Muslims wanted their creed to lead and rule the earth. Thus they clash with the corrupt and deviant beliefs such as those of the polytheists and the Magians. 13.6.3 The beginning of the obligatory military service at the time of Sayyidina Uthman bin Affan and Umar bin Khattab. The Battle of Qadisiyah was among the reasons Umar radiallahu anhu made an official decision to initiate obligatory military service. When Uthman radiallahu anhu granted Muawiyah permission to launch the first naval campaign, he told him to ask for volunteers and not to force anyone to join him. So the only ones who participated were those who actually wanted to go. In contrast, joining the land troops that would help them in the conquest was binding upon the government soldiers of Sayyidina Uthman bin Affan's time, who received salaries and allowances. Inshallah, we will stop here on page number 285 and pick it up. Again, we have quite a way before making it into the final days of Sayyidina Uthman bin Affan, which is a very, very important event, a very important situation. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika wa tabaraka asmu rabbika wa ta'ala jadduk wa la ilaha ghayruk wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-'aliyyil 'azim. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.